Hello everyone, here at psst.one. Today another interview with Warnecke, a multimedia artist based in Valencia. His works encompass from installation, audio and naturally visual. I had the opportunity to interview him before his performance at CTM Hexadome exhibition here in Berlin at Martin Gropius Bau. He is well known for the performance back in 2015 with the Frank Bretschneider Sinn+Form, and also he continued to collaborate in the past and also during this period with different musicians for audio video performance. But you will see all this stuff, so enjoy! How did you start with visuals?
I started, before visuals, I work as a musician. I'm a trained musician from forever. And I first started drifting away from acoustic music and more into electronic music when I was a teenager. Started messing around with machines and things like that. And pretty quickly, the desire to couple electronic music with video kind of became apparent. I think probably because of different performances or concerts or festivals at the time. This was probably in the late 90s, and everything had a VJ, all of a sudden in techno and electronic music. And so this idea of having sound and music together is not a new idea. It existed before, but that was my discovery of it. And so I decided that, I want to do this. I want to have sound and video every time I do a creation. So.
This which year?
I think this was kind of end of high school for me, so like around 2000, I guess. And so I started just basically by making small music videos. I think the first thing I did was resampled all the space scenes from like Aliens or Alien 3 or so, or all the spaceship scenes, yeah. And then I tried to do like a video without any humans and just with it. And so that was my first real interest, and then from there I just developed from editing to trying to do that live as the software became more available and computers were able to kind of handle live sound and video. Then I kind of moved towards that.
In your works in general, you work with from one side in an analog way, from the other side in more organic and realistic stuff, more filmed. How did you choose to work in these two fields, and how do you combine these two styles?
I think that the analog, the organic, the film things, comes from my origins doing video. So I began with a camera and filming things, and not doing 3D software. I didn't really mess around with any synthetic images. So I definitely started with that, and I continue to do so. But I became interested in trying to, I think, make some three-dimensional images or make some generated images. So I started taking these objects and trying to make them as unrealistic and unreal as possible. So I ended up hanging them and filming them in dark with just one single light and giving them simple movements, simple lighting, and focusing on the texture of the objects. So I used a lot of found objects. And I think I started trying to move away from sort of this organic, real objects by still using them, but by kind of deforming them a bit. And so recently, in projects that are coming up, I want to try and play with this difference between computer-generated imagery and actual filmed imagery. So to sort of blur the lines between what's real and what's not real. What's fake and what's not fake, which I think we are grappling with in a much larger scale in society today. So for me, that means doing visuals, that I would create some objects that are three-dimensional, that are generated, that are hyper-real, that look very realistic but are not, and find ways to combine them with filmed objects. So yeah, trying to blur the lines between what's real and not real. I'm going to use organic textures, but map them onto three-dimensional objects. So I've done a few tests. The project is called Sediments, and it's with a musician in France, Clément Edouard. And so we've only made a few tests for the time being, but the idea is to explore all types of rock formations and sedimentation. And so part of that will be in real time, and we'll have some rock structures that we'll film with cameras, and then the other part will be generated. And so I did some tests by taking pictures and textures and mapping them onto 3D objects, and I use Blender for that. And you can get, I mean, obviously you can still, I think, tell the difference between what's real and what's not real. But if you get the lighting correct, you can kind of make real objects seem a little more unreal. And if you use organic textures on 3D objects, you can make hyper-real fake objects seem a little more real. So I guess basically inching one towards the other and sort of trying to get them as close as possible.
The Mirror and the Mask, a project more organic. This project was with Yair Elazar Glotman. How did you develop this project?
That was actually the project, I would say, where I started thinking about this idea of really trying to blend real with unreal imagery, and so the Mirror and the Mask was a performance that Yair and I did together. I was commissioned by Mirage Festival in Lyon, and for that we decided to explore sort of masks in the beginning, and I made these hybrid masks and sort of in Photoshop of a bunch of different types of masks, and then they became 3D objects that we did renders of. So, and then I also 3D printed them and decided to film them live. So we tried to do this combination of hyperreal and real imagery together by taking one object that was real and filming it, and I had smoke and sort of had this alchemical setup that we could film in real time, and combine that with images that we had a friend help us render in I think it was in Cinema 4D, that gave it more like a fleshy kind of David Cronenberg texture to it. But it was the same object, so we kind of were able to use the similarities to travel back and forth between real and unreal things. So.
Your production is not only focused on visual, you produce also music, right?
I do, I mean, I'm originally, and I studied music, so I'm like I would say I studied music and I self-taught. I'm self-taught for video, which is an interesting combination. But yeah, no, I create music, and I have a few. I did a release 2 years ago on Room 40, Lawrence English's label. That's more ambient, and I have some weird, noisy tracks that are going to be coming up on a raster media release. So there's Frank has curated a compilation for kind of upcoming electronic music producers. It's really nice. It's got a wide variety of dance floor and left field. I'm on the other spectrum, but yeah. So I do produce sound as well. Yeah.
In 2015, you start your collaboration with Frank Bretschneider with the performance Sinn+Form. How do you get in touch with him? How did you start this collaboration?
Frank's one of my heroes from a long time ago, and actually one of the earlier concerts that I saw, that I mentioned earlier, seeing some shows where I was like, okay, that's the future, was I saw like a raster-noton showcase, and it was maybe a bit later already. It was maybe 2003 or 4 or something like that. And yeah, Frank did a really cool show, and it was really simple, but just everything was synced, and every time there was a sound, there was an image. And so we met at a festival in Paris. He was invited, and I was also doing a small thing, and we just started talking, and this was before I lived in Berlin. And I moved to Berlin. I just wrote him back again, and we didn't really meet up. And then actually Nick Meehan, who is the director of the ISM Hexadome project, used to run a space called Feed, and he did some evenings in KW Institute for a couple of years, or a year, maybe 2 years. And so I performed at one of the evenings, and Frank was there. I think he had also performed the previous week, and after the show, he was like, "Oh, it was really cool," and I was like, "Oh no, your stuff's really cool." and yeah, he's just a really nice guy, and it was easy to talk to him, and we started throwing some ideas around, and so the idea of Sinn+Form was born.
We are here in Martin Gropiusbau. Tonight you will present your installation and with a performance with Frank Bretschneider at ESM Hexadome exhibition. Talk me about this project.
So for this project, ISM Hexadome, Frank and I are proposing a piece called Approximate Accuracy that we've worked on a little bit before. And we felt that using video synthesis would correspond the best to what Frank was doing with his modular rig. And so I tried a couple different things out. We worked with Lumen software, which is kind of a nice, easy virtual analog modular system for video. And then I decided to use vSynth because I'm more of a Maximus P person. And it was really easy for me to work with. And it's also much more customizable since you can drop in the different modules and connect them however you want and kind of build your own custom rig. So it actually resembles like a Eurorack style setup much more. And so we worked together in residency in ZKM and we sort of put together different scenes that worked with the sounds he was working on. And we thought that for this piece, what would be nice would be to focus on some very simple elements. So there's a lot of focus on just vertical bars and noise and feedback, and just a really simple combination of that, some color changes. So it's super simple setup, but just like a modular, like Eurorack rig, with very few elements, you can also get some nice complex things. And so I think that's sort of the idea of this. We'd have to ask Frank to verify, but it's trying to make something complex with simple elements. And even though we do have a wealth of tools that allow us to do amazing things sonically and visually, it's also nice to go back to really simple things and try and focus on some more simple things.